It's good to see you all once again. Got your Bibles? Go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 4. I'm excited, well, as I always am, to be in the Gospel of Mark. But I'm excited for this lesson because in this lesson today, you're going to see the power of Jesus Christ over creation. And it's just a wonderful testament to who Jesus is and his call or his ministry as the Lord as he began ministering to this world. So Mark chapter 4 verse 1, Jesus, and we talked about this when we got into the chapter, Jesus, as he's going throughout his ministry, had become so encompassed by people that he can't eat, he can't rest, he can't escape the crowds, he can't do anything. And so in Mark chapter 4, for him to have this teaching lesson, which we're the only two in the Gospel of Mark, he has to get into a boat, cast down a little bit on the sea, and you kind of turn around there with the sea as your backdrop, the mountains around you, kind of making this natural amphitheater. So he's been spending all day long, he's teaching, he's having private lessons with his disciples. He's given the key parable, the parable of the sower, and these agricultural lessons, using again parables and sowers, and a major emphasis is on evangelism. But that concludes the teaching section of Mark chapter 4. You say, well, why did you tell us to go to Mark 4? Because of what's about to follow. The teaching lessons are over. This next section that closes out the chapter is a private lesson for his disciples. Because once again, he's going to show how powerful he is. This whole section before us now centers around what you see on the screen. The perfect storm. There's actually 4 different storms we're going to look at in this lesson, even though only one is mentioned. I want to take you all the way back to where this began, where Mark's emphasis as he wrote this letter to the Romans really began. If you're going to make this statement, Jesus is the Son of God. He is God. He's equal with God in all things. You have to prove it. You have to be able to prove it, that He has power over all things. I mean, that's a mind-blowing statement. Now, that doesn't surprise us as Bible students because we've read John chapter 1. If you've read John chapter 1, you should already have the answer. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things are made with or through Him, and without Him nothing was made. So we already understand this, that this is all about Jesus. And if Jesus is the creator of all things, it would stand to reason that He has power over all things. We mentioned this already. We think about the big miracles, right? But what power would it take to make this statement? Your sins are forgiven. Now, it's not hard to say, but hard to do. Healing the sick takes miraculous power. Casting out demons takes miraculous power, which Jesus proves. But answer me this. What kind of power do you have to have for nature to obey your voice? I can't get my kids to listen at home. I can't get this teen class to listen on Sunday mornings. And yet, Jesus speaks and nature obeys His voice. For example, if I were to walk out to a raging sea storming, and I said, hey, that's enough. You know what that sea would do? Nothing. Sea doesn't care who I am. Jesus can say, hush, and the sea goes as calm as glass. So I want you to see this power on display for Jesus Christ. Verse 35. We're going to wrap up the chapter this afternoon. Mark chapter 4, verse 35. On the same day, when evening had come, He said to them, let us cross over to the other side. So there's our kickoff point, which ties all the way back to verse 1. This long day of teaching, evening has come, the multitude is left to go home, and so Jesus is going to get just a little bit of a break from the crowds, and so He tells the disciples to go to the east side, really southeast side of the sea. And then I hear this, well, He's trying to get away and trying to escape. Well, not if you know what happens as soon as they get to the other side. Now, the sea is not specifically mentioned here, but we know what it is. It's the Sea of Galilee from the banks of Capernaum, where His ministry has been primarily focused at this point. And if I should have put a picture up here, and I'm sorry for not doing it. I want you to get a visual image of the Sea of Galilee, which is basically shaped like a pear. Capernaum is up here on the northwest corner, and they're coming all the way down here to the southeast quad, which is where the Gadarenes are. So they're on the Sea of Galilee, which today is Lake Gennesaret, and just this violent lake. Just violent lake. Lake Gennesaret, I find this interesting, hopefully you do too. Lake Gennesaret is the lowest freshwater lake on the planet. If you like fishing, I guarantee you this. If we had Clifton and Leon and Danny over there fishing, we wouldn't get them out. Like they'd stay there. It is prime for fish. There's 3 different strata on this lake. Amazing production of fish. There's stories of people bringing on these little boats over 1,200 pounds of fish. I mean, just an incredible lake. But it is the deepest freshwater lake tucked in between mountains, fed from hot springs, from the Jordan River flowing down from Mount Hermon. So you've got Mount Hermon, 9,200 feet high. The Sea of Galilee, 700 feet below sea level. So you've got this major drop into the lake. And I want you to get the imagery of what's around it. Completely surrounding the Sea of Galilee are mountains. So this sea sets in a bowl. I keep saying Sea of Galilee, but it's a lake. This lake sets down in a bowl. And so we're from the south, okay? We know what this means. Imagine this. You've got a lake 30 miles east of the Mediterranean Sea where hot air is blowing in, hot, wet air is blowing in. Coming from the other direction is this cold air off of Mount Hermon. Now, if you've lived in the south any length of time, what happens when hot air and cold air cross like that? You get storms. You get violent storms. And that's still the case today. So you got this small lake tucked in between these swirling mountains, and again, prime for these storms. But this is something these men would be used to. They grew up on the lake. This is their lifeblood. This is where they fish. We know at least 4. You hear 7 primarily thought to be fishermen. At least 4 we know for sure. But this brings us to the reality of where we're going in verse 36 to the end of the chapter. What we're reading about here is not a usual storm. This isn't what they're used to. Because as dangerous as this is and familiar as they are with this, their response to this storm tells you everything you need to know. But the saving grace for them is not what's going on outside the boat, but who's inside the boat with them. Now there's something else I want you to notice real quick before we get into this event unfolding. It's the next verse. It's the next verse. It's not the next verse, apparently. There it is. It's the next verse. Verse 36. I thought I was about to yell Alexander. I figured you were doing something to mess it up. Now, when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other boats were also with him. So, the only reason I want to highlight this verse real quick before we get into what actually happens is we often get this imagery of one boat in the middle of the sea. The boat the apostles and Jesus are on in the middle of the sea, that's it. That's not the case. There's an entourage of boats, and they're all going through the same storm, and we only get the vantage point of the one boat with Jesus, and while there's boats all around them. There's an entourage going. Now, the journey starts off uneventfully, and remember, it's 11 miles. 11 miles from the northwest to southeast. That's all they've got to go, 11 miles. And when you bring in Luke's account, this is recorded in Matthew 8 and Luke 8 both. When you bring in Luke's account, Luke says that as they began the journey, they were sailing. These boats were built where you could either row with paddles or you could hoist a sail. And if you were sailing, guess what that meant? The weather was perfect. The wind was at your back. It was beautiful. It was calm. But would you like to guess what normally comes after those calm periods? This is where this is going to start getting real for our lives. Right? There's a very practical application to this. You see, this is the calm before the storm. But in your own life, when you have these calm moments, you can almost be guaranteed of one thing. Something's coming. Something's coming. For them, the storm was just around the corner. Yeah, verse 30. Read verse 37. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. I said filling. Let me get this to work. I'm not going to get that word. So they started the journey, verse 37. The wind was at their back. Things were going great. And in verse 37, a windstorm arose. That's perfect, right? The waves are beating into the boat. It says the boat was filling. This is not the usual storm that these fishermen were used to. The literal meaning of that phrase, I get a kick out of these words. The literal meaning in that phrase, a great windstorm, the literal meaning is a fierce gale storm. When you hear that word gale, what do we think of in our terminology? Gale force winds or hurricane winds. That's that level of wind blowing. That's terminology to describe hurricanes, high winds, high waves. It's very descriptive language. We know it came upon them quickly. It came upon them fiercely. And so all they could do in this case is drop the sail and hang on. That's all they were able to do. The sea's so small. I want you to get this. The sea's so small, we kind of, because we say sea, we think ocean. Waves are just blowing past you, right? They're in a small bowl, basically. So that means when the wave goes just ripping past them, it's going to go just a little ways. It's going to hit the bank, and then it comes back. And then it goes back. And it just keeps, water's everywhere. It can't escape it. It's not going to just calm down. You have this major storm, not something normal. And in fact, based on what Jesus says in verse 40, there can be little doubt that this storm came directly from God to teach the apostles a lesson. In fact, Matthew's account, he adds more detail to this by saying violent storm, which in the Greek is seismos megos. Now, you don't have to be a Greek scholar to figure out these words. Seismos, seismic, megos, major. This major seismic event. Seismic we think of like earthquakes. Now, we're not told how long into this event before they start panicking. But just imagine their mindset, because they just were at the calm before the storm. Now they're panicking in the storm. And I want you to see if in this, if we can find the lesson for all of us. See, when you go from calm to storm, when you go from calm to panic, it changes our outlook on things. So I imagine, what would you do, right? Water's pouring in the boat. You're going to almost start pedaling the water out. You're going to lose. You're not going to win that battle. I can just see Chad sitting there like a little cup. Just, I can't water out. And you can't do it. You're not going to win that struggle. Oh, and it's not time, by the way, which adds fear to it because now it's dark and you can't see. And it's the breaking point for everyone on the boat, and we all come to that limit, by the way, so we can't start beating up on the apostles here, where panic wins out because something so big is in front of you, it makes you panic for everybody but one person in the boat. Oh, he changed it. There we go. Just man. See, everybody but one boat's panicking. But he, that's Jesus, was in the stern asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said, and our English isn't doing this justice. Because in the Greek, this is all emphatic language. They're screaming, "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" They're screaming this because they're terrified. And do you know something that I find amazing about this passage? This is the only time in Scripture ever recorded for us that Jesus is actually sleeping. We know he slept, of course, but the passage actually makes a point to tell us he was asleep. Now, because of that, it makes me wonder if that sleep was on purpose. Maybe there's a lesson coming. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I love seeing his calmness in the storm. Jesus isn't worried. Plus, we get a beautiful image of the humanity of Jesus here, that he was probably tired, exhausted. After Sundays, and as soon as we get home, don't call me for about 2 hours. As soon as we get home, I'm asleep. I don't. There's at least a 2-hour break. I don't know what my kids do on Sundays. I'm going to sleep. Jesus did it from sun up to sundown. He's got to be exhausted. So it was common in these types of boats, they would have a cushion in the back that was there for lying on it. In fact, the actual word for that pillow was head pillow. It was a pillow that you could lay your head on, you could rest. And so as soon as they take off, according to the Gospel of Luke, Luke chapter 8, as soon as they go off, Jesus lays his head down, he goes to sleep. So Jesus is calm with the disciples. They are panicking, they're freaking out, they don't know what to do. They reach the breaking point. They shout out to Jesus, waking him up, "Hey, don't you care that we are perishing?" They're terrified. And I love this, and don't miss this in the verse because it's easy to do. Did the wind and the waves wake up Jesus? No, he's still asleep. What was the one thing that woke Jesus up? His disciples started shouting to him. He heard their voice. He hears them, and then Jesus wakes up. Now, the disciples, they knew that Jesus had power over sickness, but I mean, come on, this is nature, right? No one has power over nature. And so, whether they thought Jesus could spare them from death, whether they thought Jesus could do something to help out here, they had nowhere else to turn. But I doubt they had any idea of what was about to happen. So you have the calm before the storm, the panic in the storm. Now let's see the great calm after the storm. Verse 39. Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. I love how simple this is. It's like it's no big deal. Jesus, don't you care that... Yeah. Peace. That's it. The language the phrase in which that is actually said in the Greek, there's no dramatics to it. There is when they're yelling to Jesus. They're panicking. You can see in the language. Jesus just gets up. Peace. He's not even raising his voice. That's enough. Like it's the simplest thing in the world. The wind listened. It quit blowing. And I want you to understand how amazing this miracle is. Because it's one thing to say that the wind stopped and everything just kind of quit. But when it had been violently raging back and forth from that to nothing, because just the wind stopping doesn't mean the water stops. The water's still sloshing everywhere. But when Jesus said, "Peace, be still," the water went as calm as glass. The wind stopped. The water stopped moving. This phrase even means a great calm. So the disciples had seen Jesus cast out demons using the same phrase. They had seen Jesus heal the sick, but they had never seen anything like this. This guy speaks and nature obeys. No effort, just his voice. It's as if nature knows the voice of its creator. Now, while this is a literal account, I love the symbolism in this. I'm careful to make this a symbolic event. This is a literal account. But Tertullian, who is a Christian author in the 200s AD, he said this, and I like the way he said it, so I thought I'd read it for you. "But that little ship presented a figure of the church, and that she is disquieted in the sea, that is, in the world, by temptations and persecutions, the Lord patiently sleeping, as it were, until roused at last by the prayers of the saints, he checks the world and restores tranquility to his own." Tranquility being peace. See, the disciples are about to learn that there was more to this than they realized. But hey, I'm sure Jesus, after all this, kind of gave everybody a hug, right? He said, "Hey, it's okay. Not a big deal. It's fine." But he said to them, "Why? Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" Jesus saw their little faith. He saw their panic. They didn't need to be in a panic. But guess what? Would you like to know what the human side of us does every time we're in a terrifying situation? It causes us to panic. We think in terms of our humanity often more than in terms of our faithfulness. It begins to consume us. So, this was a faith lesson for them. This was not just a natural occurring storm. Jesus even he tells us this in verse 40. But this is a lesson for them. And that's eye-opening given what they saw so far to know that it still doesn't resonate. People still struggle making that transition to resignation because even when Mary, even after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, Mary runs to Peter to, hey, the Lord's risen, He's not there, the grave is empty. And what does Peter do? What? He doesn't believe it. They still had a ways to go in perfecting their faith, which is something we all need to understand. That doesn't happen overnight. I'm a Christian now. I'm going to fully rely on the Lord until the storm comes. Jesus is trying to get them to learn the same lesson that He wants us to now. We can rely on Him when storms come. We don't have to go about it alone. Now, be forewarned, and this is the part people don't like. All right, this is a truth for you from this lesson. People don't like. Nowhere in here did He say He was going to remove the storm from you. But nowhere does He say that you do it without Him. God's promised always to be with us, never to forsake us. But notice this real quick. I'm going to try to stay on topic. I'll try to keep this one short and sweet. While the storm is over in the sea, there's still panic brewing for some reason. There's panic after the storm. So we had the calm before the storm, panic during the storm, the great calm that ends the storm, and now you've got a panic after the storm. Notice the last verse, verse 41. Remember, storm's over. It's great calm now. Verse 41, and they feared exceedingly, saying to one another, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey Him? They just thought they were afraid of the storm. Now it says that they feared exceedingly. In fact, the word, I'm trying not to just keep going to Greek too much. In fact, the word there that's describing that exceedingly fear is basically describing knees knocking. Like like they just saw a ghost. They're terrified. Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey Him? He's God. The sea obeyed Him because He created it. It knows His voice. And so I love this account that during the storm they're afraid. After the storm, sitting in the calm, now they're really afraid. Like it didn't get better. They're really afraid. The language again, absolutely terrified. Imagine having God there in the boat with you and you just miserably failed your faith test. The same Lord that is over all creation, He saw what was going on. We think, well, He was asleep. He didn't know. Yes, He did. And He sees whether they're relying on Him and trusting in Him. And so I'm going to leave you with this afternoon. I pray that you take this with you. I pray that it's something that helps you. Because I know for a fact, and there's things, actually I'll say it this way. There's things I know for a fact, and then there are several things I don't know. But I do know when I start from this end on the front row, and I go all the way around, and I come all the way back to Stephen, I know if I go row by row, I will find people going through some kind of storm. The storm's different for everybody. Some are major storms. Some are storms that are not too bad. Now, regardless, one thing we all have in common is none of us like it. None of us are happy about the storm, and I get it because we all prefer the calm instead. But again, wherever there is calm, you can almost be guaranteed that a storm is just around the corner. But it doesn't mean peace disappears with it. And so I want you to remember this. Last thing I'm going to leave you with. The storm that's around you cannot win if Jesus is in the boat with you. It can't win. Now, it doesn't mean the storm is fun. It doesn't mean that we're going to be thrilled about it. It doesn't mean we're going to like it. But that's essentially the Lord's lesson to them. You're panicking, and I'm right here with you. You don't have any reason to panic. You know, and we got people on our prayer list. We got people struggling, going through different things, emotional things. And so it's good to know, I honestly believe this, it's comforting to know that no storm can swamp us in our faith when Jesus is standing beside us. Because in the end, regardless of what happens following the storm, whether things get better, whether they don't, we have a great reward waiting on us. And that, friends, that should give every one of us courage. So he ends this teaching section and he goes to this practical lesson. And it's a lesson they are going to learn, that storms are going to come, and yet you don't have to be afraid of it. Powerful lesson. So if there's anyone here this afternoon, if there's anyone struggling and bearing heavy weights and difficulties in your faith, and you need the prayers of the congregation, you need us to be willing to pray for you, pray with you, help encourage you in any way. If there's someone here that's not obeying the gospel that would like to do that, we're ready to help as well. But I want to encourage you with this. Brady's about to come and lead us in our invitation song that closes out our services today. And if we can do anything for you, I want to encourage you to come at this time as we all stand and we sing this song.